Yeah,
So,
tough stuff. All right, and then we get down to probably the most important fact here, and it's this guy that is Saul of Tarsus. Talk about his background, talk about what he was up to, when he got converted, what happened, and then some of the things that happened through his life.
sure. I list them separately because they're very different people. James is it's a strange kind of skeptic when you live in a family with the person. I mean, can you imagine these boys when they're teenagers? Go make your bed. Why? You don't tell Jesus that his bed's made. It's just like all these little things. Why is he never gets it? Why does he never get time out? I mean, after a while, a person can be kind of bothered by that insider, oh, he's your favorite, isn't he? Versus the outsider, Paul, as we said, basically PhD in Old Testament, a scholar, energetic, grabs men, women, and children and takes them to the jail at least. And he thought he was doing God a favor. He identifies himself as a Pharisee in Philippians chapter 3 and says that I outstripped my colleagues in terms of zeal, and I was gung-ho. So you got a scholar, and you have an insider, you love him more than me kind of thing. Two different kinds of people, and they both come to Jesus because what happens to these other believers all of a sudden happens to them, and it's right there in front of them. And you're right, their testimonies, when you mentioned the big four in the early church, 2 of the 12, Peter and John, and Paul goes to see Peter and James, the brother of Jesus, in Galatians 1. In Galatians 2, when he comes back, John's there. They're the big four. The two others, Paul and James, and the 2 of the 12, Peter and John, by far the foremost influential believers. And by the way, to me, the point is these men put themselves in harm's way. We don't have to prove they died for their faith. However, they always, someone might say, well, how can you read minds? How do you know they were willing to die for their faith? You don't have to read minds. Just look where they went. They always went where they got in trouble. And Paul keeps doing it over and over and over and over again. But anyway, we have first century sources for the martyrdom of 3 of them. Paul, Peter, and James. We have first century sources. And so many Christians, it's almost unanimous among conservative Christians, that John is the only one that didn't die as a martyr. Well, that's another subject. But we do have a second century source that John was martyred. And second century is, not bad in terms of,
right.
When Bart Ehrman does the history, what we can know from Jesus, he goes 100 years. So that's from roughly 30 AD to 130 AD. So all 4 of them could very well have been martyred, including John. And Paul's with them in Jerusalem,